Hi, welcome back to the Follet video book. Today we're going to finish up chapter 3 in the novel about the incubus. This particular part of the chapter is once again not appropriate for children or those who don't appreciate sex or music or bi. But if you're willing to give it a try, give it a listen, get comfortable, kick back, and enjoy the story. Here we go. The woman walked over to the bed as the now familiar mist of a dream swirled around her bare feet. By the time she got to the man's side of the bed, the dream had taken her clothes. Her now long auburn hair reached to her waist and fell as well down her chest, obscuring and then almost revealing her small breasts as she walked. Her ass and legs were muscled like a dancer's, and she walked slowly, letting Follet enjoy her advance. When she reached the bed, she reached out with her left hand, and the dreaming man rose to her. His body remained asleep, and yet in his dream he stood to enfold her in his arms. She lifted her face to the dreamer, and as he lowered his mouth to kiss her, his left arm moved across her back while his right hand moved down her back to touch her waist and then to softly cup her ass. They kissed. She moved her hands under his arms and pulled him to her, holding him tightly, as their lips played and explored and promised each other. Almost as one, they bent their legs to sit on the floor. He sat cross-legged, and she climbed into his lap, reaching for his hardness and guiding it into her. She settled onto him, her legs wrapped around his waist. His head was now a little below hers, and he directed his kisses to the side of her neck. His lips caressed her skin, and his tongue tasted her and traced the line of the big muscle that ran from the hollow of her throat up to just below her ear. She moaned softly and put her hands behind his head to hold him there. Her nipples barely touched his chest, and she moved slightly so that they teased him. Their hips did not move. She held him inside her, filling her, waiting. He moved his head from her neck and unfolded his legs beneath her. He reached for her breasts and let the tips of his fingers brush lightly across the tips of her nipples. The fleshy nubs hardened and grew. He moved his mouth close and blew softly across the nipples, moving his lips closer and closer, but stopping just before touching her. He stuck his tongue out. Follet could see a drop of saliva at the tip and touched the wetness to a hard nipple. His mouth opened, and he let his lips encircle her pink areola, closing in a sucking kiss. She broke that kiss by pulling her breast from his mouth and leaning back, bracing her arms on his thighs. As she pulled her upper body away from his, she pushed her hips against him and moved them in a circle. Follet could see the man pushing his hips into her so that his cock filled her pussy. He moved his hips forward and back, a counterpoint to her circular movement. There was no hurry. They fucked like this for a while, while time seemed to hold its breath. It was playful for a while, but then, almost imperceptibly, the tempo and the intensity of their coupling changed. The fucking took over and issued its own commands. It was imperative. It was urgent. And then, in a sensory explosion, it was finished. The man's dream faded, and the mist swirled across the floor, and the succubus walked back to lounge in the Eames chair. She smiled as if to say, "Your dreamer is next." As the sleeping woman's dream began, the mist once again swirled around the room. It occurred to Follet almost as an afterthought that just as he was able to watch the succubus in her dreamer's dream, so she would be able to watch him and his dreamer's dream. Follet walked to the bed through the mist that announced the dream. The dreamer sat up and gave him her hand and left her sleeping body. In her dream, she wore a cotton button-down shirt over a flowing skirt, knee socks, and something lacy underneath on the bottom, and no bra. He knew her name was Annie. He reached to hold her face in his hands and was amazed by her glowing green eyes, soft pink lips, and sprinkling of freckles across the bridge of her nose. "Tell me," she said, and took his hand and led him to a comfy overstuffed couch that had appeared in the dream. They flopped down and sank into the cushions. She sat next to him, her torso turned to him. "Turn your head to me and kiss me," he whispered. "Let our lips softly touch and our mouths open. Let our tongues touch and then dart away. Suck my tongue into your mouth and then set it free." Annie let her lips barely touch his. They met his slightly open mouth and pressed against his, insisting that he take her mouth. Her tongue was tentative and playful, reaching for him and running away, leading the chase. As he pushed his tongue into her wet warmth, she closed her lips around him and sucked him inside her. They played this game and others until she broke away gasping and quietly laughing. "Touch me," she breathed. He looked into her eyes as he let his hand touch her cheek and then slide down to her chest, his fingers lingering on her nipple as it hardened through the soft cotton. He pinched it gently between his thumb and first two fingers, and she moaned and kissed him so softly that he would have thought that he had imagined it if she hadn't closed her eyes. He massaged her breast, and her hand slid down to his crotch, rubbing his hardening cock through his jeans. He kissed her again and looked into her eyes, watching them smile at him, and she unbuttoned her shirt and then unbuttoned his. Then Follet whispered to her, "I want to hold one of your breasts in my hand and put my mouth over your hard nipple, sucking softly, and then harder into my mouth, teasing its fleshy hardness with my tongue." And he did. "Then I want you to loosen my belt and unbutton my jeans." And Annie did. Follet raised his hips, and Annie slid his jeans down over his hips. He wore no underwear, and his cock sprang out warm and slightly throbbing. Follet's heart was pounding so hard that he could barely breathe to her. "Hold my cock in your hand, squeeze it. Rub it slowly up and down the shaft while you take one of my nipples into your mouth and lick a wet trail down to my belly. Cradle my balls in one hand, gripping my cock with your other hand, and open your warm, wet mouth and take me inside. Use your tongue and suck," Follet moaned. She used her hands and mouth to follow Follet's commands. When she had taken his cock into her mouth and had sucked on him for a while, she let him go. Annie looked up into his face, and he took her face in his hands and guided it back to his mouth to kiss her again and again. He slid one of his hands under Annie's skirt, rubbing the soft skin behind a knee and moving up her thigh until it reached the lacy fabric of her panties, slipping around the back to cup her ass and then reaching to pull it down. She still held his cock, and they adjusted themselves. Follet lay back, and Annie straddled him, guiding his hardness into her wet pussy. She pushed against him and then away. He pushed himself into her and then pulled away until just the tip of his cock was barely inside her. And then he pushed once again into her as far as he could. He reached down with one hand and wiped some of her wetness from himself and put her fingers into Follet's mouth so that he could taste her as they moved apart and together again. He pulled her down to kiss her mouth, reached to squeeze her breasts, and then broke the kiss to move his head to suck on her breasts. He sucked at her breast until she moaned. He took his mouth away and saw that his kiss had bruised her there. He had left his mark on her. They began to move faster and harder, and she reached around and cupped his balls in one hand. When he came, Annie felt Follet's cum exploding into her. She kissed him on the lips and sucked his lips into her mouth. He stayed inside her after he came until he was limp and fell out of her. She moved down and licked their juice off his cock, and then moved up to his mouth to kiss him, mingling their cum and juices and saliva together in their kiss, while she held his limp penis softly in her hand. The mists of dreaming began to swirl across the floor as Annie's dream ended. Follet found himself standing by the dresser, looking at the sleeping couple on the bed, bathed in the afterglow of their dreams. He looked at the succubus and smiled. She smiled back, pointed to the door, and crooked her finger for him to follow. They walked out of the bedroom and down the stairs. Follet was about to walk out the front door when the succubus touched his arm. "I'm hungry," she said. "When I came in for the dream, I came through the back door in the kitchen. There's a beautiful lattice crust cherry pie on the counter. Want some? Those two upstairs are going to sleep for a while. I think we might have tired them out." Follet laughed softly. "I can't think of anything I would like more." "Well, almost anything," and looked into her eyes, which he realized were sky blue. They walked into the kitchen. The succubus opened a drawer under the counter, closed it, and opened another drawer before she found a roll of waxed paper. She searched the drawers for a pie knife, and when she had found one, she cut 2 pieces of the pie and laid each one in a square of waxed paper. She walked to the sink and cleaned the pie knife, dried it, and returned it to the silverware drawer. Then she moved back to the pieces of pie and made pockets of waxed paper that held the slices so that they could take them with them. "Let's go," she said. "I've got to get back to my bike." As they walked out the back door and down 3 steps, Follet asked, "Your bike, isn't that dangerous?" "The incubus explained our calling to me, said that riding a motorcycle was, well, frowned upon." She laughed. "Yeah, but what the hell? Riding a bike is too much fun to give up, and an old boyfriend gave me his bike, a 1952 Vincent, when he died." They walked along in silence for a few moments, each taking a bite or two from the pockets of pie. Up ahead in the middle of the next block, he could see a black motorcycle. "Now all we need is a cup of coffee," Follet offered. "I'll have to take a rain check. Places to go, people to, see, you know." They reached the bike. She unlocked a black helmet from a bracket by the seat, Her clothes changed to black leathers with knee-high black leather boots and a line of heavy chrome buckles down the outsides. "That's one of the benefits of our profession," she said. "We can choose the clothes we wear." "My name's Follet," he told her. "Mine's Meridiana, but you can call me Mary," she said. She kicked the bike to life, revved it twice, and dropped it into gear. "See you soon, Follet," she called as she accelerated down the street. Follet started the long walk back to his car, munching on the juicy cherry pie and humming to himself, wishing he had a harmonica. "You know, the tides of love are so strong. You know, it carried me back and showed me my wrong. To satisfy, yeah, what I thought I'd be, I kept on living in my own dream."